Let me ask you something honest. Are you working hard every single day, but still feel like you are just surviving, not thriving? Have you ever watched someone with similar talent, similar resources, and similar opportunities completely outperform you? And you wonder, what do they know that I don't? Here is the uncomfortable truth. Good is the enemy of great. Most people, most companies, most lives never become great, not because they fail, but because they become comfortable being good. Good enough feels safe. Good enough pays the bills. Good enough is acceptable. But acceptable is not what you came here for. Today, we are going to break down one of the most important business books ever written, Jim Collins' Good to Great, a book built on 5 years of research, analyzing 11 companies that made a rare leap from average to extraordinary and sustained it for 15 years or more. This is not motivation. This is a science-backed blueprint that you can actually use in your business, your career, and your life, starting today. Let's get into it. But before we dive in, if you are new here, welcome to Millionaire Playbook. This channel is not about theories, it is about implementation. Every single week, we break down the most powerful ideas from the world's greatest business books and thinkers, and we show you exactly how to apply them in real life. If that sounds like something you need, subscribe right now and hit the notification bell. Your future self will thank you. Now, let's talk about what separates the great from the good. What is this book about? Jim Collins and his research team spent 5 years studying thousands of companies. They started with 1,435 companies that appeared on the Fortune 500 between 1965 and 1995. After months of intense financial analysis, they narrowed the list down to just 11 companies, 11 that made a genuine transformation from mediocre results to extraordinary results, and kept those results going for at least 15 years or more. These companies averaged cumulative stock returns 6.9 times the general market over 15 years. To put that in perspective, General Electric, considered by many the best-led company in America at the turn of the century, outperformed the market by only 2.8 times over the same period. One example, Walgreens. For over 40 years, Walgreens was just a completely ordinary company. Then, in 1975, something changed. Walgreens began to climb, and it kept climbing. Over the next 25 years, $1 invested in Walgreens beat $1 invested in Intel by nearly 2 times, beat Coca-Cola by 8 times, and beat the general stock market over 15 times. How? Why Walgreens and not Eckerd, a competitor in the same industry with the same opportunities? That question is the entire point of this book. Collins and his team spent 5 years studying thousands of companies. They didn't start with a theory, they started with data. And what they found was surprising, even shocking. Almost everything conventional wisdom says about building greatness is wrong. And today, we're going to walk through every major concept one by one so you understand exactly how to apply it. The framework is simple. It has 3 stages: disciplined people, disciplined thought, and disciplined action. Inside those stages live 7 powerful concepts. Let's go through each one. Concept 1. Good is the enemy of great. Before we get to what great companies do right, we need to understand the trap they escaped. The trap is called good enough. Collins writes that we have few great schools, principally because we have good schools. We have few great governments, principally because we have good ones. Few people attain truly great lives because it's just too easy to settle for a good one. Think about that for a moment. Good feels like success. You pay your bills, you have a job, your business is running. But good is a ceiling disguised as a floor. And the very fact that things are fine is what stops most people from ever asking the harder question, could this be extraordinary? The first mindset shift from this book is this: you must stop treating good as an acceptable destination. Good is a resting place on the way to mediocrity. Great requires a decision, a conscious, deliberate choice to refuse to settle. How do you apply this today? Start by asking yourself one question about every major area of your life. Am I here because this is truly the best version of what I could be doing, or am I here because it was comfortable? That honest self-assessment is step 1. Concept 2. Level 5 leadership. Now here is the first finding that shocked Collins' entire research team. When they looked at all 11 good to great companies, they expected to find bold, charismatic, celebrity leaders at the helm. The kind of leader that appears on magazine covers, gives TED Talks, and builds empires with the force of their personality. Instead, they found the opposite. Collins calls them level 5 leaders, and they were, in his words, a paradoxical blend of personal humility and professional will. They were quiet, modest, self-effacing, and ferociously, almost stubbornly determined to build something great. Let me give you the most powerful example in the book. Darwin Smith became CEO of Kimberly-Clark in 1971. The company's stock had fallen 36% behind the general market over the previous 20 years. Smith was an in-house lawyer, mild-mannered, a bit awkward, completely unknown in the business world. Even one of the board members pulled him aside after his appointment and reminded him that he lacked some of the qualifications for the job. Smith never wavered. 2 months into his new role, doctors diagnosed him with nose and throat cancer and gave him less than a year to live. He told the board and made it clear he was not dead yet and he had no intention of dying anytime soon. He continued his full work schedule, commuting weekly for radiation treatments, and lived another 25 years, most of them as CEO. Here's what he did next that changed everything. He looked at Kimberly-Clark's core business, coated paper, and concluded it was doomed to mediocrity. The economics were bad, the competition weak. So he made the most dramatic decision in the company's history. He sold the paper mills, including the mill in the town of Kimberly itself. He threw all the proceeds into the consumer business, investing in brands like Huggies and Kleenex. Wall Street called it stupid. Analysts downgraded the stock. Smith never wavered. 25 years later, Kimberly-Clark owned Scott Paper outright and beat Procter & Gamble in 6 of 8 product categories. When asked to reflect on his extraordinary performance, Smith said simply, "I never stopped trying to become qualified for the job." That's level 5. Not arrogance, not ego, an iron will wrapped in complete humility. Now compare this to what Collins calls level 4 leaders, the comparison companies. Al Dunlap, brought in to run Scott Paper, Kimberly-Clark's direct competitor, was the opposite in every way. He loudly beat on his chest, he cut the workforce, slashed R&D, and spent his time building his own celebrity image. He even wrote a book about himself, where he compared himself to Rambo. Under Darwin Smith, Kimberly-Clark outperformed the market by over 4 times. Scott Paper, under Al Dunlap, was eventually sold off. There's a crucial pattern here that Collins calls the window and the mirror. Level 5 leaders look out the window when things go well. They credit their team. They credit luck. They credit the people around them. When things go poorly, they look in the mirror and take full responsibility. Level 4 leaders do the exact opposite. They preen in the mirror when things go right and look out the window to assign blame when things go wrong. So here's the question for you. Are you building towards something larger than yourself, or are you building a platform for your own ego? The leadership style you choose, humility with fierce resolve or ego with surface confidence, will determine whether you build something great or something that collapses the moment you leave the room. Action step? Catch yourself this week when you're taking credit. Try looking out the window instead. Notice what changes. Concept 3. First who, then what? Now here's the second concept under disciplined people, and it completely inverts how most people think about building a team or a business. Most leaders believe you first figure out where you're going, the vision, the strategy, the destination, and then you recruit people to execute on that vision. Good to great leaders did the exact opposite. They first got the right people on the bus, got the wrong people off the bus, and then figured out where to drive it. Wells Fargo is the clearest example. In the early 1970s, CEO Dick Cooley could see that the banking industry was going to undergo massive, unpredictable change due to deregulation. He didn't pretend to know exactly how things would unfold, so instead of building a brilliant strategy, he focused all his energy on one thing: recruiting the best possible people he could find, often without any specific job in mind. His reasoning was simple and profound. If I'm not smart enough to see the changes that are coming, they will, and they'll be flexible enough to deal with them. When deregulation finally hit, and it hit hard, Wells Fargo navigated it better than anyone.
Bank of America, U.S. Bancorp, Bankers Trust, and more. Bank of America, the comparison company, took the opposite approach. They followed what Collins calls the weak generals, strong lieutenants model, deliberately hiring mediocre managers so that stronger subordinates would not leave. It produced a culture of waiting for directions, avoiding conflict, and never challenging the status quo. When Bank of America needed to turn around, where did it find its talent? It recruited heavily from Wells Fargo. Now here is the critical insight for you. The right people are your most important asset, not the vision, not the strategy, not the technology. And right has more to do with character than credentials. The good to great companies placed greater weight on work ethic, integrity, and values than on specific skills or experience. Skills can be taught, character cannot. Nucor Steel built its entire hiring philosophy around this. Instead of setting up plants in traditional steel towns, they located in rural areas, places filled with farmers and people who wake at dawn and just get to work without being asked. People who would rather chase off a lazy coworker than let their team be dragged down. Collins also gives 3 practical disciplines here. First, when in doubt, do not hire. Keep looking. The cost of a wrong hire is almost always greater than the cost of a vacancy. Second, when you know you need to make a people change, act. Do not wait. Letting the wrong person occupy a seat is unfair to them and to everyone else on the team. Third, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. Managing problems makes you good. Seizing opportunities makes you great. Here is how this applies to you right now. Before you decide what your next big move is, stop and ask yourself, who needs to be around me for that move to succeed? Build the team first. The destination will become clearer when you have the right minds on the journey with you. Now here is the critical insight for you. The right people are your most important asset, not the vision, not the strategy, not the technology. And right has more to do with character than credentials. The good to great companies placed greater weight on work ethic, integrity, and values than on specific skills or experience. Skills can be taught, character cannot. Nucor Steel built its entire hiring philosophy around this. Instead of setting up plants in traditional steel towns, they located in rural areas, places filled with farmers and people who wake at dawn and just get to work without being asked. People who would rather chase off a lazy coworker than let their team be dragged down. Collins also gives 3 practical disciplines here. First, when in doubt, do not hire. Keep looking. The cost of a wrong hire is almost always greater than the cost of a vacancy. Second, when you know you need to make a people change, act. Do not wait. Letting the wrong person occupy a seat is unfair to them and to everyone else on the team. Third, put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. Managing problems makes you good. Seizing opportunities makes you great. Here is how this applies to you right now. Before you decide what your next big move is, stop and ask yourself, who needs to be around me for that move to succeed? Build the team first. The destination will become clearer when you have the right minds on the journey with you. Now we move into disciplined thought, and the fourth concept is perhaps the hardest one psychologically, because it requires you to look clearly at things you might desperately not want to see. Collins calls it, confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith. The comparison here is between A&P and Kroger, two grocery chains both over 80 years old, both facing the same changing market in the 1970s. Americans were moving away from small traditional grocery stores toward modern superstores. Both companies knew this, they both had data, they both ran experiments. The difference, A&P did not like what the data was telling them, so they ignored it. They literally ran an experimental store called the Golden Key, discovered it was working brilliantly, and then closed it because it threatened their existing model. A&P then spent decades lurching from one failed strategy to another, firing CEOs, cutting prices, letting stores get dirty, and losing market share year after year. Kroger, on the other hand, looked at the same facts and acted. They decided to rebuild their entire system, every store, every region, city by city, state by state, around the new superstore model. By 1999, Kroger became the #1 grocery chain in America. A&P dwindled into irrelevance. The lesson is not that one company was smarter than the other. The lesson is that one company had a culture that allowed the truth to be heard, debated, and acted upon, and the other did not. Collins introduces a concept here called the Stockdale paradox, named after Admiral James Stockdale, one of the highest-ranking American prisoners of war in Vietnam, held for over 7 years and tortured over 20 times. When Collins asked Stockdale how he survived, his answer was stark. I never lost faith that I would prevail in the end, but I also never confused that faith with the need to confront the brutal reality of my current situation, whatever they might be. Stockdale then revealed something remarkable. The prisoners who did not survive were the optimists, not the pessimists. The optimists, the ones who said, we'll be out by Christmas. Then Christmas came and went, then Easter, then Thanksgiving. Their hearts broke. The Stockdale paradox is this: you must hold two things simultaneously, unwavering faith that you will prevail in the end, and the discipline to face the brutal reality of where you are right now, without filtering, without denial, without false hope. This applies to your business, your finances, your relationships, your health. Where are you looking away from something you already know is true? Where are you running away from a difficult conversation that needs to happen? Here is the action step. This week, identify one area of your life or business where you have been avoiding the facts. Write it down. Name it exactly. Then ask yourself, what would I do right now if I knew I was definitely going to prevail in the end? That is your next step. Concept 5. The hedgehog concept. This is arguably the most powerful strategic framework in the entire book, and yet it is breathtakingly simple. Collins draws on an ancient Greek parable about a fox and a hedgehog. A fox knows many things. It's clever, fast, and uses many strategies. A hedgehog knows one big thing, and it knows it deeply. Every time the fox attacks, the hedgehog curls into a perfect ball of spikes. Simple, consistent, effective. Great companies are hedgehogs. They find one simple, clear concept, and they execute it with extraordinary focus. But finding that concept requires answering 3 questions, and the hedgehog concept only exists at the intersection of all 3 answers. Question 1, what can you be the best in the world at? This is not about what you want to be best at. It's an honest assessment. In what area could you genuinely become the best in the world? And equally important, what can you not be the best in the world at? Because the hedgehog concept requires you to let go of things that don't belong at the intersection. Question 2, what drives your economic engine? Good to great companies identified a single financial denominator, one ratio that if you focused on improving it above all others would have the greatest impact on profitability and sustainability.
For Walgreens, this was profit per customer visit. That single insight led them to abandon food service restaurants, even a chain named after the CEO himself, and obsess over the convenience drugstore model. Question 3. What are you deeply passionate about? Not what you think you should be passionate about, not what looks impressive on paper, what genuinely lights you up. The hedgehog concept only works when all three circles overlap perfectly. Here is what makes this concept so powerful and so difficult. Most organizations try to pursue growth in areas where they're simply competent, but Collins is clear. Just because you've been doing something for years, even decades, doesn't mean you can be the best in the world at it. If you can't be the best, that activity should not define the core of a great company or a great career. Abbott Laboratories is a vivid example. For years, Abbott was a drowsy pharmaceutical company living off a single cash cow product. When CEO Gordon Kane took over, he did something brutal. He eliminated nepotism, even firing family members from the board and executive team, because he was committed to filling every seat with the absolute best person for the role. Then he focused the entire company on what it could genuinely be the best at in the healthcare industry. Over the next 26 years, Abbott generated shareholder returns that beat the market by 4.5 times and outperformed industry giants like Merck and Pfizer. For your personal application, take a piece of paper and draw 3 circles. In circle 1, write what you could genuinely be the best at, not just good at, but world class. In circle 2, write what you are most passionate about. In circle 3, write what drives your income or economic value. Now, look at the overlap. That overlapping space is where you should be spending the majority of your time and energy.
If you're not there, you now know what needs to change. Concept 6, a culture of discipline. Here is where so many people misunderstand what it means to build a great organization. Most businesses, when they want more performance, add more rules, more management layers, more oversight, more bureaucracy. Collins makes a radical claim. None of that is necessary when you have the right people operating within a culture of discipline. He puts it beautifully. When you have disciplined people, you don't need hierarchy. When you have disciplined thought, you don't need bureaucracy. When you have disciplined action, you don't need excessive controls. A culture of discipline is not about rigidity or micromanagement. It is about building a team of self-disciplined individuals who are fanatically consistent in their pursuit of the hedgehog concept. It is about being willing to stop doing things that fall outside your 3 circles, even if those things are exciting, even if they seem profitable in the short term. Collins introduces a brilliant framework he calls the stop doing list. Most organizations have to-do lists, but the good to great companies were equally rigorous about their stop doing list, eliminating everything that was not aligned with their core concept. Kroger stopped being in markets where it could not be number 1 or 2. Walgreens stopped being in food service. Kimberly-Clark stopped being in coated paper. In each case, the leaders willingly abandoned profitable, familiar activities because those activities were not part of who they were going to become. The trap that most companies fall into is what Collins calls the doom loop, and we will get to that soon. But the essence of avoiding it is staying fanatically consistent with your core focus, even when short-term pressures push you in other directions. Action step for you. Make a list of everything you are currently doing in business, in your day, in your career. Then ask of each item, does this fall within my hedgehog concept? If not, it belongs on your stop doing list. Start eliminating. That is not failure. That is discipline. Concept 7. Technology accelerators. Here is a finding that surprised almost everyone who read this book. Technology is not a primary cause of greatness, and it is not a primary cause of decline. Collins found that good to great companies were not technology pioneers. They did not use technology to ignite their transformation. Instead, technology played a very specific role. It accelerated momentum that already existed. The Nucor steel case is instructive. In the 1980s, a new technology called mini-mill processing became available. Most traditional steel companies saw it and wondered if it was relevant to their existing operations. Nucor saw it as an accelerator for the culture and cost efficiency model they had already built. They adopted it aggressively and became one of the most innovative steel companies in the world, not because of the technology itself, but because of the foundation they had already built. The pattern Collins found: good to great companies would ask, how does this technology align and accelerate our core hedgehog concept? If the answer was yes, they pursued it aggressively. If the technology did not fit the concept, they ignored it or paid minimal attention. Comparison companies, on the other hand, often leaped onto technology as a way to solve underlying problems they had never addressed. Technology became a shortcut, a way to avoid the harder work of building disciplined people and disciplined thought. It almost never worked. The lesson here for you: before adopting any new tool, platform, or technology, whether it's AI, automation, a new software system, stop and ask one question: does this accelerate my core flywheel? If yes, go deep. If not, be cautious. Which brings us to the final concept. Concept 8, the flywheel and the doom loop. This is the capstone concept of the entire book, and it is the one that ties everything together. Imagine a giant, heavy flywheel, a massive metal disc on an axle. To get it moving, you push. At first, nothing seems to happen. You push harder, it moves an inch. You keep pushing, it starts to rotate, slowly, painfully slowly. You keep pushing, hour after hour, day after day. Then something shifts. The momentum builds. The wheel starts to spin faster on its own. You're still pushing, but now each push produces more result. Eventually, the flywheel is spinning so fast that its own momentum does most of the work. That's what a good to great transformation looks like from the inside. There is no single heroic moment, no grand launch, no dramatic announcement, just consistent, aligned, disciplined action in the same direction, push after push after push until breakthrough. From the outside, people might look at these companies after 10 or 15 years and say, wow, what was their turning point? What was the big move? But when Collins interviewed the leaders, they couldn't identify one. It was just a lot of good decisions consistently executed, was the typical answer. The flywheel analogy captures exactly why. When you're inside the flywheel, every turn feels incremental. But when you step back and look at years of consistent turns, the compound effect is staggering. The comparison companies experienced what Collins calls the doom loop, the opposite pattern. Under pressure for results, they would make a big, dramatic, sweeping change, new strategy, new CEO, new reorganization. And when that didn't produce instant results, they would pivot to something else, another dramatic change, another reorganization, back and forth, constantly changing direction before any single direction could build real momentum. The doom loop feels dynamic, it looks decisive, but it destroys momentum at the exact moment companies need to be building it. The most important insight: the transformation from good to great is not a single event, it's a process, and that process can only succeed if you commit to pushing the same flywheel, your hedgehog concept, turn by turn, push by push, without abandoning it the moment things get difficult. Here's how this applies to your life right now. Think about the area where you want to achieve something great. Are you consistently pushing in one direction, building momentum, or are you constantly jumping to new strategies, new systems, new approaches every few months, creating your own doom loop? Pick your flywheel, commit to it, push it today, push it tomorrow, keep pushing. Final concept: from good to great to built to last. Collins adds one final bridge at the end of this book, and it's worth understanding. Good to great gets you sustained great results, but lasting greatness, the kind that spans generations, requires one more layer. You need core values, a purpose that exists beyond profit, a reason for being that transcends any single product, market, or era. Collins points to his earlier book, Built to Last, as the companion framework. Good to great shows you how to build the engine. Built to last shows you how to make that engine last for a century. The combination is build great results first, then infuse those results with enduring values and a transcendent purpose. The key principle: preserve the core, stimulate progress. Hold your fundamental values sacred while constantly adapting your strategies and methods to a changing world. For you, as you build towards greatness in whatever domain you're in, ask yourself not just what results do I want, but what do I stand for? What values would you never compromise, even if it cost you in the short term? That clarity of values is what transforms a great year into a great decade, and a great decade into a legacy. Practical implementation: how to start today. Let me now give you a clear step-by-step action plan based on everything we've covered. Step 1, this week, do an honest self-audit. Where are you good enough when you could be pursuing great? Write down one area where you've been settling. Step 2, this week, identify the brutal facts you've been avoiding, one honest conversation you've been postponing, one reality about your business, your finances, or your direction that you've been looking away from. Face it, name it, then build your plan from that honest foundation. Step 3, this month, work on your personal hedgehog concept. Draw the 3 circles. What can you genuinely be the best at? What drives your economic engine? What are you deeply passionate about? Find the intersection. If you don't have answers yet, that's okay. The question itself is the work. Step 4, ongoing. Build your stop doing list. What are you currently doing that falls outside your 3 circles? Start eliminating those things. Create space for your flywheel. Step 5, ongoing. Think about who's around you. Are the people in your closest circle the right people for the journey you're on? If not, what do you need to change? Start by upgrading one relationship, one mentor, one colleague, one accountability partner. Step 6, forever. Push your flywheel every day, consistently in the same direction. Don't let short-term pressure force you into a doom loop. Trust the process. Trust the accumulation of good decisions made consistently over time. Let me bring this all home with a quick summary of every key lesson from good to great. Good is the enemy of great. Stop settling for acceptable. Level 5 leadership is not about personality. It's about humility plus fierce professional will. Look out the window when things go well. Look in the mirror when things go wrong. First who, then what. Get the right people around you before you decide where you're going. Character matters more than credentials. When in doubt, don't hire. Confront the brutal facts, yet never lose faith. Hold the Stockdale paradox. Face reality clearly and never ever give up on your ultimate belief that you will prevail. Your hedgehog concept is the one thing you can be the best at, that you're passionate about, and that drives your economic engine. Live inside that intersection. Build a culture of discipline. Have a stop doing list. Eliminate what doesn't belong in your 3 circles.
Technology accelerates your flywheel. It does not replace it. Only adopt technology that fits your core concept. The flywheel is the truth about how greatness is built. Turn by turn, push by push, decision by decision. No drama, no miracles, just consistent, disciplined momentum in one direction. And finally, build toward values that transcend results so that what you build outlives any single season. Here is the most important thing I want you to walk away with today. Greatness is not reserved for the gifted. It is not reserved for the lucky or the connected. Jim Collins' research proved beyond any doubt that ordinary companies, ordinary people made extraordinary leaps, not because of a single magical moment, but because of a series of disciplined choices made consistently over time. You have that capacity, starting today. But remember, good is always going to feel comfortable. The question is whether you are willing to push past comfort, confront the truth, build the right team, find your hedgehog, and push that flywheel even when nothing seems to be moving. Because one day it will. And when it does, it will feel like it happened overnight, but you will know it was every quiet, disciplined push along the way. Now go make that first push. If this video added value to your thinking, if you learned something you were going to use, please subscribe to Millionaire Playbook, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below telling me what is one brutal fact you are going to face this week. I will see you in the next one.